All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you again for making time to be with us. Of course, me together with Professor decided to do this. She'll explain a little bit more the gist of why we're doing this. So, to outspoken women, maybe before that, a couple of housekeeping rules. Okay. Please mute your mics. Actually, I'm sure the admin person has already muted your mic. Do keep your camera off as well. And you can ask questions in the chat box. And, we're trying to keep it within 30 minutes. We know that there'll be lots of questions, so we will prolong it a little bit, I'm sure, right? I'm going to pass on to Prof. You want to say something before I introduce Jenn?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome everyone to the second episode of Outspoken. Today we are being outspoken about guilt. We're going to give you in a 30-second the reason why Freda and I got together and we came up with this idea. Less than 2 weeks ago, we had a very simple and very quick WhatsApp exchange of how you're doing, just a check-in on seeing if everybody's doing well. And both of us, we realized that we still have so many things to say, even though she talks for a living and I talk for a living. But we feel like there's a lot of things that we want to say that are not necessarily within the platform of our jobs, if you want, or of our professional platforms. And also, we wanted to talk about things that are non-COVID related, but they are still very, if you want, simply hard topics. So in 4 hours, people, we put together the theme, the sort of like the speakers. We came up with 4 topics. Last week, we talked about being bold, and we had a very bold conversation about what it takes to be bold. Today, we have a very outspoken guest, the lovely Jenn that Freda is gonna introduce later. And today, we want to talk about guilt. And actually, this was a topic that the two of you
Yes.
up together, right? We were talking about
Yes.
how people feel guilty.
Indeed. Yes. So it was at that time when I was talking to you, I was also talking to Jenn, and we're just saying that we're in this particular situation where we're blessed that we've got what we've got, but at the same time we look at what's happening, and some people aren't as fortunate, and we feel guilty for feeling guilty, right? And it was just like, why are we ridden by these things? But Jenn, as you know, owns Wanderlust & Co. They've been around for 10 years, very interesting online. And of course, she's also offline in a couple of stores as well. So she's going through some very interesting times we were sharing a little earlier on. And so just thanks for coming on with us. We will start with the first question. Prof, you want to ask the first question? Yeah.
So I just we have 4 primary questions, and then we had a couple of questions from the audience who registered, but also we want to encourage people to chat with us in the chat group. So these are sort of the 4 questions that are going to prong our conversation. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so you can see us in our glory. I don't know if you noticed, but we're all wearing white because we feel like we are guilty of nothing. So we are very innocent. We feel guilty.
Until proven.
Well, I don't know. Speaking of which, I'm guilty of drinking white wine at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I realized, there's no rules of engagement in COVID. So, of today would be what makes you feel guilty, and we're going to start with our guest, and then we're going to talk about how do you get over it. But let's talk in a couple of minutes. What makes you feel guilty?
So I think we covered this very briefly the other day, but one of the things I feel really guilty about, and I don't know if everyone else can relate, is I guess not being sure if I'm doing enough of everything. So I run a business as per intro. We've been around 10 years. We are distributed across 400 countries. We ship every day online. And I have 2 young kids under the age of 3, been married for 8 years. So hopefully that's a sign of something. But then all together, despite all the praises or good things that people can say, at the end of the day, quite often we feel guilty. We feel guilty for all kinds of things. Am I doing enough as a mother? Am I doing enough as a wife? Am I doing enough as a boss? Am I doing enough for my business? Am I then doing enough for myself? And then you go, why am I doing this to myself? Then you feel guilty for feeling guilty. That's me.
That's the gist of it. I just want to add to that. Maybe I'm a little bit older, that I have sort of clarified a couple of things, right? I think we've been sold on a couple of statements like, you can have it all, right?
Yeah.
And I believe you can have it all, but not at the same time. And that's the reality of life. And if you can come to terms with that there are certain life stages, and I understand as a business owner, you've got all these things going on. I have a son, thank God he's 17. I don't have to change his diapers anymore. It comes to different issues as well as he was growing up, right? And then I went into, as a single mother, I went into solution mode, and this is the best that I can do, right? To the best of my ability. And that was just how I live, right? And so you've got to come inside and know that this is the best I can do to the best of my skills, the best of my strengths, and what I can't do, I outsource.
Yeah.
I thought about what do I feel guilty, and I have to say, I used to feel a lot of guilt for a lot of things, and then the more I built on my self-confidence, the more I realized that I'm getting rid of a lot of the guilt. And I think in my case, I started thinking, why do I feel guilty about things? And I realized that the reason why I feel guilty, and actually I want to ask people maybe to comment in the chat about what do they feel guilty about, is I feel guilty when there's a difference between the expectations that I have from my environment, be that friends, family, people, and the things that I want to do. So I feel like a lot of the guilt is the pressure that I allow others to put on my shoulders, right? So it's not even that I don't blame anybody. I don't blame my family. I don't blame my friends. Right. I'm only saying that I allow that to happen. I allow the pressure, the exterior pressure to make me feel guilty. In my case, I feel guilty. I used to feel guilty, and I'm working on that. I feel guilty when I take time off. When I go into, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, when I go into guilty pleasures, if you want, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then I realized, and I had a very stupid observation. So one day I was desperate, looking at my phone that it only had 2% battery, and I was like negotiating with my phone and begging my phone to hold on there and give me a little bit more. And then obviously the phone is not a person, so it's not going to give you 110%. It's going to give you exactly 2% if that's what they have. And then I decided, okay, I have to plug in my phone and I have to wait until my phone recharges. And then I realized, oh my God, I have compassion for my phone, but I don't have compassion for myself. So if I need to recharge, I'm not going to give myself the time and the space to recharge, or I'm not going to do the same thing with others. So I started to realize, you know what? I should not feel guilty about the time that I need to recharge. I should not feel guilty for the time that I need to recover myself, because that's my charging station. If I allow my phone to charge because it needs to charge to function, then what? I'm actually reading a little bit of here. I feel guilty for taking time off, but I remind myself, this is what Michelle is telling us, I remind myself that resetting, rejuvenating, and recharging is necessary. Absolutely. If this one needs time to recharge, why are we different?
Right. And, tell me more about the guilty pleasures, Professor.
So when I started sharing this on social media, I got a lot of comments saying, are you going to talk about guilty pleasures? So I started having a little bit of a banter with people who were talking about guilty pleasure, and I said, tell me what's a guilty pleasure for you. So one of my dear friends says that she used to be embarrassed about admitting that she likes, she enjoys Taylor Swift. And then I realized that I actually love Taylor Swift. I might not be her, posse, but I love Taylor Swift. And I asked her, why do you feel guilty about this? And she says, well, I'm a little bit worried about what other people think. Then I ask other people, what do you feel guilty about enjoying? And some of them says, well, one of my guilt pleasures is to watch the Kardashians or the Real Housewives, or one of my guilt pleasures is, being a couch potato, getting myself surrounded with like chips and ice cream and things like that. And then I feel guilty if somebody else finds out about it. This is the interesting thing, right? So it's again, the projection that others have on you. So I decided that if it's a pleasure, you should not feel guilty about it. I mean, if it's illegal, yes, maybe, right. But instead of calling
disclaimer.
Instead of calling them guilty pleasures, why don't we call them comfort pleasures? I mean, if it gives me comfort to watch the Kardashians while digging into my favorite vegan ice cream, bucket.
To be vegan.
Bucket.
One of the things is like something Michelle said about seasons in life as well, right? So the different seasons. When my son was younger, my priority was my son when he was younger. But this whole idea of scheduling fun, I schedule fun, right? And because I work hard, and a lot of times people don't schedule fun. And no, fun is, if I were to plan the year, I plan when my holidays are going to be for the year, and I put work into it, right? Of course, that has been thwarted, but never mind. Life goes on. But what I do is scheduling fun is top priority for me, right? And travel.
How about
I
you?
want to sort of add into that. So being an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur, they said. You will have flexible working hours, they said. You will have control over your own time, they said. You will have freedom, they said. Lies. All lies. and then you would be put on magazines, on BFM, touting those lies so that everybody wants to be like you. And then when they get into it, you're like, I fed you lies. But I did this OHPL course, this leadership course in Oxford 2 years ago. I was very lucky to be able to take a week off. Look at me, sort of like lucky to take a week off, But and one of the things I learned there is actually scheduling time with myself. And just adding on to what you were saying, Freda, is that we don't, like your calendar is in actual fact a representation of your priority. And so if all that's in your calendar is meetings, and you're not putting something in there like date night or movie night or anything, right? Holidays. And so what I started actively doing, and it's legit in my calendar every Wednesday, is I would block out 2 hours in the morning and then at least 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. And it just says review. And it's time for myself, because I'm not lying in bed with my Ben and Jerry's or my vegan ice cream, sorry. I'm actually just taking time to go through my emails, reading something, and like reading a research paper and thinking how to apply it, like strategizing, properly going through reports and results and seeing how I can apply that, and that thinking time with myself is so precious. And ever since I started doing that, I found myself a better leader. I found myself a better human being, because when we're run down, we're useless to everyone around us. And sometimes about the things you feel guilty about, it's all about trial and error. If you just, if you feel bad about something and you kind of know it's not that bad, whether it's taking a break or taking time off, test a little bit of it in an incremental way, see for yourself how your life is better off or worse off, and then take it from there. Because I think not pushing yourself is also really important. We all have comfort zones. It's easy for someone who doesn't practice what you feel to say to you, do it this way instead. But it's another thing to also be kind to yourself and allow yourself progression out of that guilt, if that makes sense.
Right. When I look at you guys, and I've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs, and I really take my hat off, and I was like, can I do it? I don't know. I don't know if I have the capacity and the because there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. So I hear the stories, right? The conversations that we have. I don't know if I want to, but so and then so what I do is I know that then we get into this comparison envy, right? This person's doing this, but there's a lot of that. I think that's where the guilt comes from. But so and so is like this, so and so is like this, and they say, why can't I be? I'm not geared that way. I'm not built that way, right? So understand what you are as well, and that will also eliminate some of the guilt.
So one of the things that I feel like we're going into now is talking a little bit about what makes you feel less guilty. So when you go into this guilt trip, what do you do to get yourself out of it? Or what are some of the tools or advice you have for people to feel less guilty? And I see that we have a very chatty group. So I want to ask people in the audience to maybe tell us about what are some of the things that you do to feel less guilty. And I do want to say that there are some things that you should feel guilty about, right? And feeling guilty is a natural process of self-control and self-checking and self-improvement. So I don't think either of us are here preaching that you should never feel guilty about anything. But I think it's more of how do you take that feeling of feeling guilty? So I feel guilty a lot of the times for being too direct and being very harsh. It's part of my culture to be extremely direct. We never had enough time to sugarcoat things. We didn't have sugar. We grew up really poor, so I haven't sugarcoated anything. But actually, the second I raise my voice or I feel too abrupt, or I feel very guilty about it. So I do think that there's natural things that you will feel guilty about. But what are some of the tools that you use to feel less guilty when you do?
Jenn.
What do I do to feel a bit less guilty? Have conversation with strong women like you guys, you too. I would say reflect on, I know we were joking at the start when we were warming up saying that oftentimes people who end up in therapy go to therapy because their inner circle refuses to go to therapy. So someone else is refusing to deal with the problems that are obvious and repairing themselves or seeing themselves for the way they are. Then we end up having to fix them. And I would say that I'm still on my journey, but I would really reflect on the cause of it, like what's making me feel guilty. So right now, for example, I know a lot of businesses are actually cutting costs because of COVID. And right now within my company, I haven't actually cut anyone's pay just yet. And yet when I'm asking people to do XYZ, and I know they're working outside of their office hours on their laptops at home, and some of them are facing a bit of difficulty, I feel guilty that I'm not doing enough. And then I stop and I ask myself, why am I feeling this way? Is it true that I haven't done enough? Or am I just feeling bad for everyone in general? Because like we were sharing at the beginning, Freda, like everyone's going through something at this point, right? Yes. And it's like the mask situation. You kind of have to put on your own mask in order to help yourself before you can help anyone else, right? So I would say the way I deal with it is to really spend some time with myself and understand why I'm feeling that way, and really what's the trigger point? Is it childhood? Is it something that's been ingrained in me, that's been passed to me because of a practice I've always observed culturally? Or is it something I want to take ownership of, meaning that it has, because, you know, we have all these habits and behaviors and reactions that are ingrained in us from childhood, you know, or from our education systems. And that's not to say they're good or bad, but they are a certain way. And then you get to this point in your adulthood where you have to investigate for yourself if that's something you want to continue to carry on, or if you want to divert and try something else as a reaction or as a way of thinking. And I think that type of mindfulness and consciousness is so woke and so new age. And I would say that's the beginning point of figuring out what you need to continue to feel guilty for, because that sometimes it does exist for a reason, or what you can stop feeling guilty for. So I know it's a bit of a complex response, but that's kind of my take on it.
Right. Well, it's a complex question, right? Freda, how about you? And we have a lot of comments here. Do you mind if I read a couple of comments, or do you want to read a couple of comments? So self-awareness, Michelle says, by the way, Michelle is the therapist that we have at ASB. She's a psychologist, and she's helping us deal with a lot of these issues. Self-awareness helps me with self-guilt. It's accepting myself for weaknesses, being authentic, don't lie to myself. Going through a comparison envy and wanting to come out of that intact. Reminding myself that I'm only human, realizing that I cannot make everybody happy. I can only control my emotions and my actions, but I cannot control how people react to that.
Yeah, correct.
100%.
Right. So I was just laughing because I was thinking, you know, and where this guilt comes from, is it our mothers, right? And so, I mean, we've all had a share of that mother thing. And so I don't want this stereotype or typecast to continue with my son. Okay, but that's a topic for next week.
Yeah. But it's real.
It's real, right? So just yesterday I was having a conversation with someone, and she was going on and on about the refugees and everything. And I'm like, yes, I know the situation, and it was draining me. And I'm just saying, like, what can you do? What can I do, right? If I can't go on and be a frontliner to help, do they need money? And that's where I can come in, and that's within my control, right? I know there's so many people that you know, they're foreign workers, and I'll feel guilty because I don't have this issue. But what can you do with your resources? What can you do to help? Is it time? Is it money? What is within your control, right? And just know that that is the best that you can do. So anyway, I had this conversation. I said, I gotta go into a webinar because she was draining me. So anyway.
BRB.
I think all three of us talked at some point about dealing with very toxic people who constantly make you feel guilty.
Yes.
And then I think, Jenn, you used an example of one of your friends, and I have a similar example, but there's a lot of people who have a lot of toxicity, and they manage to make you feel guilty about various things.
Yeah. So I shared a personal story with the ladies on our catch-up call yesterday, and I have a friend that I went to college with and then to university with, and we were super close. We lived together, and it got to a point where I realized I was giving constantly, and she was constantly making me feel bad about everything, to a point where I was in, I think, in my mid-20s at that time, 10 years ago now, but at that time she said to me, because I felt like she was draining me, and I started filtering through as and when we would meet up, and life gets in the way. I was starting my business, I was getting engaged, there was just so many things, I was moving countries, and she texted me and said, don't you miss being my friend? Don't you feel, it was just always something, it was just always constantly something. And I remember speaking to some other friends, and feeling so horrible. But at some point you have to, you do outgrow relationships. You know that the you today and the you 10 years ago and the you in 10 years from now, we're evolving as people. And, you know, I sure hope we are, you know, I sure hope that in 10 years from now, none of us remain the exact same in terms of, you know, our growth or our thinking or experiences. And if so, then why are we not allowing ourselves to outgrow certain people or certain habits, you know? And if so, is it, and being okay with that, I suppose, whatever it may be.
Right.
In my case, what I realized for a long time, I got a lot of questions about my decisions of not having kids. Which, by the way, I would never question somebody, why do you have kids or why don't you have kids? But I think because most of my entourage is women, and we were all pretty much the same age and going through the same experiences in life. I had a lot of questions about, why don't you have kids? Like, don't you love kids? And by the way, that's the stupidest question to ask somebody who doesn't have kids. Like, yeah, I love kids, but you know, maybe that's not enough of a reason for me to have kids.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that actually, I think what happened is a lot of the friends that I would have these conversations with, when they would ask me, how come you don't have kids? They were actually, I think they felt like maybe sometimes some of my choices were projected on them, you know, like, if I have kids, what's wrong with the fact of having kids that you don't want to have them, right? And for a while, I sort of had a little bit of guilt over the fact that I don't want to have kids. And I kept asking, what's wrong with me? And then I realized, you know what? It's not that I don't love children, which I always did. It's the process of raising a child that doesn't really fit with the way I built my life, right? And then for a lot of times I had to have, and there was a lot of conversations about this. And I had to tell my friends, listen, your choice about having kids is wonderful. It fits with your narrative. My choice of not having kids fits with my narrative. Has nothing to do with me judging you, or you don't have to feel guilty about anything. I don't have to feel guilty about anything. It's fine. It's your choice. It's your narrative. We have some interesting questions. Yes. How can you overcome learned guilt surrounding food and body image? And how can you be more self-confident or more confident in your self-worth? And then the second question, maybe Jenn, this is more for you. What do you do with guilt when you have a business partner and you want to start doing something else? So, Freda, do you want to talk first about the body image question?
Okay, sure. You know, and this is something that, you know, the last book I wrote was called In Your Skin, and it was about people just being comfortable with who they are. Externally and also internally. I think we all face with that. Growing up, thank God it wasn't so much the social media then. It's now in my face all the time, but just reading, looking at magazines and all that. And it was something that was at the back of my mind that wasn't conscious. I don't think I was very worried about it, but maybe in the last 10 years, the demise of my marriage and all that, that really, really affected me. But at the same time, I then question myself, right? Is someone gonna like me, or am I gonna like myself for my external or for my internal? And I realized, okay, I do want to be fitter, right? I want to be fitter. So, but what did I do then, and what do I want to be fitter? And it wasn't weight loss; it was fitness, right? It was fitness. It was about feeling good inside. You know that with exercise, you feel the endorphins, you feel all that. And I had a goal, which was to lose visceral fat, right? Which is dangerous for my health. Right? And along the way, weight loss and all that. So when I look at that question, and we're always imposed on this body image and food and all that, and Jenn, you can also chip in, you know, just ask yourself, you know, what coming back to what your value is and what your worth is, right? What is holding you back? And I actually sought out a coach, right? I actually sought out a coach, and it was in my subconscious that I was not good enough. And this was a realization that probably started, that was a false belief that only came about 10 years ago, right? And so you can pick up garbage along the way, right? It doesn't have to be a childhood thing. I don't think I had a traumatic childhood, but along the way you can pick up things like that. And so I had to get rid of that thinking of I'm not good enough. And once you've gotten rid of that, it really doesn't matter, right? Because you're always gonna, I always look at, oh, someone's got great long legs. Look, I'm never gonna have great long legs. Good for you, but I'm happy with who I am, right?
Yeah.
I think it's your happiness, your smile, your glow, your that's gonna be more important. That's gonna make you more beautiful than anything else.
Yeah, I want to add something before we move to the second question. I went through a very interesting relationship with body image. Obviously, I think a lot of people say when you hit your 40s that, oh, don't you wish that you were in your 20s? And I never wish ever to be in my 20s. I think the 20s are drowned in guilt, in self-doubt, in body image. And if I think about it, I was pretty hot in my 20s, but I never experienced that. I was not comfortable with myself. And then there's a lot of trends of body positivity, just look in the mirror and say, you like what you are. And I have to say, I have an issue with that too. And recently I discovered this new concept that is called body neutrality. So I really don't want people to tell me, oh my God, you look so great, you lost weight. That really pisses me off, right?
Okay.
Because you assume that me losing weight has a positive impact on my figure. And actually what I want to say to everybody, and we have a lot of men and women in this room, when you make a comment about somebody, do not be reductive to their weight. If somebody looks good, Freda, you look really good today.
Yeah.
Don't tell me I look good because I lost weight. Don't tell me I look good because, I had work done or whatever. If you want to make me feel good about myself, just make a good neutral comment, right? But even in body positivity, there's actually a little bit of guilt there, right? So you look so good because you lost weight. I can tell you start to work out. So I'm not okay with that narrative. And I started putting people like, no, check yourself in. I don't need you to tell me that I lost weight. I don't need you to tell me that I gained weight. I don't need you to make any fucking comments about how my ass looks in these jeans.
Yeah.
If you want to tell me that I look good, keep it there, right? Preach.
All this external validation, and where does that take you? That takes you to extreme uncertainty. It just goes from, do you know what I mean? Like it's fleeting.
So Jenn, let's talk about business. How do we deal with somebody feeling guilty over the fact that they are in a business with somebody, but now they want to start another business and they feel guilty a little bit about the relationship that they have with their partners?
So this is a bit of a tricky one, because I would say in business, obviously there is an element of black and white, right? So it really depends if you have an existing business and you would like to start a new one, whether there is a conflict there in terms of the industry in your existing contracts. Like, are you violating anything there in terms of being a competitor and whatnot? Let's just assume, for the purpose of responding to this, that everything checks out and nothing really conflicts in that sense, okay?
Right.
And moving forward with it, I would say, I personally, when it comes to business, when it comes to work, and this is also with my team, I practice this thing where I make decisions with a cold heart, but I execute with a warm hand. And anyone who's a personal friend of mine, Freda, hopefully you attest.
Okay, I like that soundbite. Okay, go on.
You'll know that I'm a very warm person. I'm friendly. I love laughing. But anyone who deals with me in terms of business, hard business, and mind you, I don't have a co-founder, and it's been 10 years of this, right? I can switch that all off and look at facts with a cold heart. I can look at a balance sheet. I can look at, so going back to this, to answer this person's question, what I would do is switch off all the emotions, look at everything with a cold heart and map it out. So with this, what I would do is I would map out all the time, all the investment, everything factual relating to your new venture. Then I would bring all of these facts to your existing business partner and then execute it with a warm hand. Say, hey, I know that this is going to make us feel very comfortable. I only know this because even thinking about having this conversation with you has caused me sleepless nights for the last 2 weeks, but it's something I think I have to do. And I'm sure you can understand. And that's why we went into business together as partners, and why we understand each other so well, and why we're still in business together. I'm sure you can understand that there's more to life than this one element. Like if we're all a cake, then there's many slices to many facets to us as people. And so I need to explore this part for myself. I need to, for whatever reason, whatever it is to you, and say, I promise you XYZ, which is all the soft stuff. Like, I'll be there if you need me. My attention will be split, but whatever attention I do have would be unwavering. And this is factually how I'm planning to map this out. Please weigh in on the facts. So that's what I tend to do when it comes to business. Think with a cold heart, execute with a warm hand.
Okay, I'm just looking. I'm looking at that question, right? And why, if it's a business that you're talking to someone else that's non-competitive, I think you should be upfront with your business partner. And if it's non-competitive, and just say, I'm looking at this business, right? I mean, why be wrought with guilt, right? You only be wrought with guilt if there is a competitive element, right? And if there is a competitive element, you have to, personally, you have to question yourself. And is it because you don't have a good relationship with your existing business partner that you need to resolve?
Yeah.
Right. And, so don't start something new that is competitive if you haven't closed one chapter. You're just going to be digging yourself into a deeper hole. I'm just saying, if it's going to be complete, and you know that that's at the back of your mind, and that's why you're wrought with guilt, then sort that out first, right? It's a deeper issue.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I want to add on also one other thing, which is we're talking about guilt here, and guilt is cousins with our other friend shame. Guilt and shame together, right? Because guilty pleasures is basically hanging shame out there in my balcony, drying with my laundry, right? And Brene Brown, as most of you know, has famously studied shame. And she's come up with this concept in leadership and in management and managing ourselves at work called clear is kind. And I'm a huge advocate for this because in our Asian culture, and this prof you were saying earlier, oh, I have to apologize because I'm straightforward, I'm direct, da, 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 da. But not if you establish this culture or you set a safe space parameter within this conversation. If I come to you, Freda, I say, Freda, I'm going to share some stuff with you that's very uncomfortable. But I'm doing that, and it's a very hard conversation. It's going to be hard for you. It's going to be hard for me. But I'm doing that because I want to be clear, and I want to be kind, and I want to be fair. So set your intention before you have the hard conversation, and have those hard conversations. In Asian culture, we love to dodge, like it is very unkind to talk about someone. You are better off speaking to them. So if we take nothing away today, the best way to eliminate guilt is to attack the root of that, and to always remember that being clear is kind. Even if it's you're guilt-ridden to be like, but why, am I just trying to make myself feel better? But just being really clear is kind, and being unclear is unkind. And if anything, that should be our compass. It's my own reminder.
Right. The Hokkien expression is siam.
Yeah. Yeah, betul. The Malaysian one is the backdoor. Malaysians are so good at like the backdoor methods, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't use Federal Highway. I'll use the Kampung Tarum or some other thing, right?
All right. It's actually 3:30. I feel like Jenn brought a lot of topics to church. There's so many good comments you gave us. So I think we're gonna try to wrap it up with some advice. So before we close this session, I wanna talk about the fact that a lot of us, and Freda mentioned it's a little bit before, a lot of us feel guilty these days for being blessed, right? I mean, look at the three of us, look at everybody in this room. We're not frontline employees. We're not, we're not starving. Our lives are not in danger. But at the same time, you're constantly checking the news. You're seeing how many people are losing their lives, how many people are going through some severe and probably irrecoverable situations. So we feel guilty about that. We feel guilty that we have it good. So how do we deal with that? How do we feel guilty about being blessed?
I would say that I think I read this somewhere, and it says you can't help everyone, but you can help someone, and make that enough.
Yeah.
and that's enough, you know. Like, I believe, for me, and I know sometimes like Camillea's in the room, she's like, you're very hopeful, Jen. And like, well, if in this situation, if we have nothing, if we can cling on to one thing, can we not cling on to hope?
Right.
Yeah, nice one. Freda, how
Right.
about you?
Well, if you haven't heard of the starfish story about the old man throwing the starfish that was by the sea, right? And he was just throwing the starfish in one at a time. And the little boy asked him, why are you doing this? You can't save them all. He said, well, the old man said, you'll make a difference to one starfish, right? So you can just do what you can, right? And to the best of your ability, we all have a capacity. We can maximize the capacity, but understand that we also have limits and we also have lives to live. So just do the best that you can, and that's the reality, right? Otherwise, we all can't. We all like to be Mother Teresa, but she started also very innocently, I'm sure, just helping one person, and then it grew from there.
Yeah.
I think also Michelle has something interesting to say. I think we are given gifts so we can serve others in our special way.
Amen.
Yeah, when Freda and I talked about this, we on purpose, we said, let's not talk about COVID. And it's not that we don't have empathy, but I feel like in our way, this was a way to help. This was a way to give back. We said, let's talk about things that we can help with, right? Even if we just give somebody a 30-minute guilt-free, if you want, mind chat. But if for 30 minutes, we're taking you away from the stress that you have of the day, or, at the beginning of COVID period, I started thinking about all the service people that I have in my building. And I was thinking, do they have food to eat? Can they reach their families? And it's true, it's only maybe 10 of them, but if I can give them bread when I go shopping, even if they are small things, but I grew up extremely poor. And I remember having days when I didn't have enough money to take the bus to go to school. And even 50 seconds, to be honest, sometimes it was day changing, not life changing, but day changing, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like if every single one of us tries to do one act of kindness a day, you're gonna get rid of some of that guilt, and actually you can help one or another. So speaking of help, I want to remind everybody that this is a series of talks that Freda and I are putting together. So excited about it. Before we wrap it up, let me see. I think there's a chat here.
Yes.
Talents can be multiplied. Absolutely. So before we wrap it up, we want to remind you all that we're doing this series every Friday at 4 p.m. Our MCO was just extended, Freda, so I think we can extend our sessions too.
Maybe tell us, what they want to, maybe tell us what they want to hear as well, right? But we've got the 4 topics already. So next week, all the way from Singapore, I think he's originally Australian, Andrew Bryan, someone I've interviewed years ago. And we're talking about founder of Self-Leadership. We're going to talk about typecasts / stereotypes. So we're going to get a man in here to, to discuss it. Otherwise, it's an all-female panel again. We're fair.
A very outspoken one too, right?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Jen, for being so outspoken about guilt. Freda and I will see you all at 3 p.m. next week. Please text us in the meantime if you have any ideas, any suggestions, if you feel like this is a waste of time or actually helps you. Enjoy your day. Take a little bit of time to feel less guilty about the things you cannot control. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Freda.
Thank you, everyone.